presentation.
So I think that this will help a lot of people, bro. So the best way to prepare for a listing appointment is to ask the seller some questions.
So notice there, like I didn't ask permission. I'm like, we're doing this and I'm going to be quick. I think a lot of people use pre-qual in the wrong way. They use it as disqualification, right? And that's not really...
It's all about the motivation right there. Look, I literally just told you like 3 seconds ago that I'm moving to Arizona.
I see a lot of agents spend so much time spinning their wheels on people that aren't certain about what they want to do yet. Welcome back, Novello Nation, to another episode of the Aaron Novello podcast. On this episode, myself and my boy, Mr. Jose Luis Morales, are going to have an in-depth conversation about how to prepare for the listing appointment, right? And what I'm aware of is, preparing for a listing appointment is critically important if you want to be effective and efficient. According to the Association of Realtors, if an agent goes on 100 listing presentations, they only actually take 20 listings. And that's pretty interesting. It's only a 20% conversion ratio. Now, my personal conversion ratio is about 80, 85%. I know Jose's is similar. And, we worked on that over an extended period of time as he was coming up in the game. And now he's a listing machine. So, I'm excited to have this conversation and add value to the community. How about you, Jose?
I'm excited too, because I think it'll help a lot of people. I remember back in the day, bro, when I used to get a listing appointment, I would be so nervous because I didn't know how to prepare for the listing appointment, or I didn't know what to do at the listing presentation. So I think that this will help a lot of people, bro. So
yeah, 100%. What comes to mind, I remember having conversations with you, when we first started working together, where you felt like, man, I'm like half the presentations I'm having to go back a second time. Right. And it was just not it was like inefficient. You had the hustle, you had the will. It was just that you're spinning your wheels a lot, right? Going on a lot of these presentations and not getting the desired outcome. And once we made a little tweaks, right? One of them specifically being pre-qualifying upfront so we can gather as much information as possible and also use the pre-qualification in preparation for going on the listing presentation as a mechanism to sell, which we'll get into and kind of assumptively close. Then you started to convert at higher and higher levels. So let's walk through this, bro. When somebody reaches out to us or when we're cold calling and we set an appointment, talk to me about, the preparation that goes into that. So when somebody says like, yeah, come over, do you just like run over right away and you're like, all right, cool, I'll see you at 3?
No, not at all. And I think that's what I used to do at the very beginning. Like somebody would call me or I'd call them. They're like, hey, I want to sell my property. And I'd want to go over there immediately. But the best way to prepare for a listing appointment is to ask the seller some questions. Some people call it to pre-qualify the seller. Some people call it like an input. I've heard it like, they're like, oh, I have an input form where I ask the sellers a series of questions. So basically, the best way that I learned how to prepare for a listing appointment is to pre-qualify the seller, ask them a series of questions about their situation so that you know what you can do to be a best service to them. So it starts off with a transition. Like let's say that you set the appointment. So there's a 5-step listing process, and we went over that in our last video. Step number 1, you set the appointment. Incoming call, outbound call, set the appointment. Step number 2, you pre-qualify them, meaning you ask them that series of questions. Step number 3, you send a pre-listing package, meaning some information, which we'll cover in this video. Step number 4, you call to confirm. And step number 5, you present. You follow this process, it increases the chances of you taking the listing, and it also improves your listing presentation ratio, meaning based on how many listings you're going on, how many of you're taking, and how many of them are you taking on the first try. So the pre-qualification starts with transitioning from setting the appointment to transitioning to the script. This is the way I usually like to do it. I say, well, look, Aaron, before I come out, there are a number of questions I need to ask you. I just want to make sure that I'm fully prepared for our meeting and I could really be a best service to you. Is it okay if I ask those questions now? And my intention in asking that in that manner is that the series of questions is really all about them and helping them achieve their goals and helping them get closer to whatever it is that they want to do. So Aaron, walk us through, man, what happens after you transition, bro?
Yeah. So, and I love that. And as I'm getting ready to walk through, I'm more than happy to do that. When I asked you like, hey, when somebody calls and just says like, or you're making an outbound call and you book an appointment, do you just automatically go out? Your eyes got really big and you looked at me like, that's ridiculous. Like, why would I ever do that? Right. So it's important for people to understand that when me and Jose are saying that we do this every single time, it is absolutely every single time without exception. Right. Because in my professional experience, in those times when I imagined that I was going to make an exception, it never ends up working out in my favor, and it's not a productive use of time. So if we're either making outbound calls or it's an inbound call and we book an appointment, in preparation for connecting, Jose, I just have a couple really quick questions to ask you just to make sure that I'm fully prepared and I could be of the best assistance to you and your family. And I'll be brief because I know your time is valuable. So notice there, like I didn't ask permission. I'm like, we're doing this and I'm going to be quick, right? So then we can transition. And they're like, sure, right? And in my mind, the way that I'm thinking about this in pre-qualification, I think a lot of people use pre-qual in the wrong way. They use it as disqualification, right? And that's not really the purpose of pre-qual. The purpose of pre-qual is to gather information, the who, what, where, when, why, and how with regards to this prospective move. And also use it as a mechanism to gather, potential objections that may come up, things that you have to be prepared for when you meet with them, whether they're going to meet with another agent, whether they're going to ask you about the professional fee or the length of the agreement or things of that nature, or what are you going to do to market the home? And then also a little bit more advanced as we start to assumptively close and move things forward. So once we say that phrase to transition, then they're like, sure. And then I start to systematically ask questions. And in everybody's mind that's watching this, I want you to think about this as though there's like a door and it leads to another room. And we don't leave one door until we don't leave one room until we are complete in one of the rooms. And what the rooms are motivation, time, and decision makers. So what's the specific motivation? So once they say okay to asking, sure, like it's okay, ask me questions. So the first question I have, Jose, is I'm very familiar with your geographic area. I'm sure your home is lovely. Right? Hopefully I'm not being too straightforward. Was there any particular reason you and your family were even considering selling? And what is that question around, Jose?
It's all about the motivation right there. That's getting into the motivation now. What comes up to me when we talk about motivation, and this is where some people get caught up, they'll read a script and the script will say, when you sell this home, where are you moving to next? But like, if you already talked about that in the appointment, like you may not have to like say, hey, Jose, like when you sell this property, where are you moving to next? Because they might be like, Jose, look, I literally just told you like 3 seconds ago that I'm moving to Arizona. Instead, you can rephrase the question and say, well, look, Jose, I know that when we spoke, you were kind enough to mention to me that you're looking to move to Arizona because you want to be out and be closer to family. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. Yes, that is correct.
Perfect. And then right behind that, to dig into motivation, a question like, well, and tell me, because my job is to help you. It's never to talk you into doing anything. Is it an option for you, Jose, to not sell this home and still move? Like maybe like rent it or just keep it as a secondary home? And then quiet, because I don't want to leave that room of motivation yet until I'm clear that the motivation is very strong. Because as we're taping this, we're in an environment in which economically things are changing, and it's going to become very, very important. One of the key critical skills that we need as agents is this ability to pre-qualify at a high level and to be able to kind of flesh out 8, 9s, and 10s in motivation. Because if it's not a compelling kind of reason as to why they're going to sell some sort of life event, then they're probably not going to be willing to put up with a difference in market dynamics and perhaps a difference in their expectations as to how much they're going to be receiving on their home versus what they could have got, 6 to 12 months ago.
Now, this is another thing, like you have to be listening to when you're having the conversation with their client. Like let's say in the appointment, they tell you, oh, this is a rental property for me, or this is a property that is an estate. You're not going to say, Jose, once you sell this property, where are you moving to next? Because that doesn't make any sense, And I hear that all the time.
Do you remember when we were like Yeah, do you remember we were role playing one time and I was like, Jose, and you're like, what? I'm like, you have a really good brain, bro. And you're like, I'm like, you should use it. And you were like, whoa, because you were doing that.
Because you get so caught up in like, okay, what does the script say next? Instead of like, okay, he already told me that this is an investment property for him and that, or that this is an estate. So you have to ask yourself, what you're really looking for is the motivation. And there's different ways to dig for this motivation. So if I'm talking to somebody that owns a rental property, instead of saying, where are you moving to next? I'm going to say, well, once you sell this property, are you looking to reinvest the proceeds into something else, or are you just looking to cash out on this investment? What am I looking for right there? I'm looking for motivation. So if they say I'm looking to reinvest the proceeds, I may ask like, okay, great. And once you do that, are you looking to reinvest those proceeds here locally, or are you looking to move that money somewhere else? No, I'm actually looking to move it out of California. Okay, great. Now I've got some sort of sense as to what the motivation is. I can continue to dig deeper on that. Or if they say, no, look, I'm just looking to cash out, you may ask like, okay, great. And if you don't mind me asking, like why cash out on the property, and why not just keep the property as a rental property? I mean, or you can say like, well, Jose, gosh, it sounds like a great rental property. I mean, it sounds like it's been producing tons of cash flow for you. Like, why not keep it versus cashing out? And then I'm like, well, look, I'm really tired of being the landlord. I'm tired of like having to manage this property. I want to simplify my life. Boom. What does that give you? Motivation. Starts to give you the reason why they want to do what they want to do.
That's exactly right. And when you break that word down, motivation, it's motive to take action. It's a reason for doing something. And it was interesting because as you're speaking, those exact things were coming up for me. It's like, well, I imagine this has been a really good rental for you. And I know the rental market's, been very strong over the last 12 months. So hopefully I'm not being too straightforward. Was there any particular reason that you wanted to cash out versus just continuing to be a landlord? And then quiet. And they'll tell you, well, like I got maxed out depreciation. I got to cash out and move on to something else. Okay, cool. And is your intention to do a 1031 exchange and then repurchase something else? Or are you just cashing out completely? So what me and Jose are demonstrating to you is we want to get very, very clear on the why first, motivation, right? The motive to take action, the reason why somebody's doing something. And personally, I'm not going to move on to my next line of questioning, which is around time, until I'm clear on that.
The other thing I wanted to point out, bro, is I've seen other scripts, and this is not me talking bad about anything else, but the way that we're teaching you guys to do it is I've seen other scripts that are like, the first question that they start off with is, if what I say makes sense and you feel comfortable and confident that I can sell your home, are you planning to list your home with me? And sometimes that's too direct of a question for some people. I remember when I would ask that, people would be like, well, Jose, look, I haven't even met you. I don't even know what you look like. I don't know anything about you. And it may come off like it's too strong. So the reason I like to start off as motivation is it gives me a little bit of time to better understand their situation. I'm still going to ask the question, if what I say makes sense, are you planning to list it with me? I'm just going to ask it at a different time instead of asking it at the very beginning, because it gives me a little bit of time to fully understand their situation and almost like make it more about them than about me.
100%.
And that's what you want to do.
And that's the key right there, is that it flips it, right? When I begin to ask questions about Jose and what he's looking to accomplish and why, and specifically why it's important to him at this stage in his life that he accomplish a particular goal or objective, what I'm doing is I'm coming from a place of contribution where my intention is to serve. If I lead with a question that's about taking, it's about me, that is very indicative of what my intention is. My intention is to take. It's not to serve. So we're still going to ask that question. We're just going to ask it in a different way that's more palatable, and we're going to ask it towards the end of the conversation, right? And I think that's a critical point for people to be aware of, because the tendency for a lot of people is to lead with I, me, and what's in it for me. And I think that's backwards. And to your point where it's like, hey, if what I say makes sense, and you feel comfortable, you plan to listen to me when I see you tonight at 6. That's like going on a blind date, knocking on the door and being like, hi, are we going to smash tonight? It's like, what? Like, I don't even know you, bro. Like, we didn't even have a conversation. We haven't gone out to dinner yet. Like we didn't even relax. You know what I'm saying? You got to build a little rapport first, right?
Yeah.
So, we wouldn't do that in other areas. So it's like, well, why are we doing it here? Right. So once we're clear on motivation, and we're asking a lot of digging questions around motivation, and a key phrase there is, my intention is to help you. It's never to talk you into doing anything. So is it an option for you to not sell this home and still move, maybe like rent it out or move? Because I want to get that clarity. I see a lot of agents spend so much time spinning their wheels on people that aren't certain about what they want to do yet. And what's true is that the bad leads or warm leads, okay leads, they hide the great ones. They hide the people that are like, Jose, I'm definitely selling. I want to get on the market in 30 days. It's not an option for me not to sell. Okay, great. We're dropping everything. We're going to move things around and we're going to meet with you because it's very clear that, you have a need that we can service. So once we're clear on motivation, then we start to move to time, right?
I wanted to add a couple things on the motivation before we move on to time. Understanding the motivation can actually help you prepare for the appointment. I'll give you guys a couple of quick examples. Let's say that they say that they're doing a 1031 exchange. You can dig a little bit deeper. You can say, well, great. Do you already have a 1031 exchange company, or would you like for me to recommend somebody? Boom. What are you doing right there? You're adding value to their situation. Adding value. If they say, great, I'm moving to Texas. Great. Do you already have an agent out there? Would you like for me to make a recommendation out there? So whenever you're going out to the appointment, now you've got all this information and it's helped you better prepare for that appointment and add value. Now you're going to that listing presentation, not from what can I take from them? It's like, how am I adding value? So you add enough value at the presentation, you're going to be the one that ends up taking the listing because you're adding value. So when you're digging for the motivation, pay attention to things where you can add value for them.
So we both agree that going to closings is an absolute, unequivocal waste of time. Is that right?
Oh, absolutely.
I made a statement, like a declarative statement, that I believe that it's a waste of time for various different reasons. What an enormous fucking waste of time. Going to closings? It's not a very productive kind of environment if you've been to one before. If you're listening, you talk about the weather. I don't even know why you're there. Truthfully, the only reason you're there more often than not is just to pick up the money. I mean, that's really what's true. And the title company does their job, or the attorney does their job. And yet what was so interesting is I got so much pushback.
The industry hasn't been reinvented in over, 50 years prior to EXP. They were kind of the trailblazer of the next generation. A lot of these agents are still playing catch up with the mentality. You were sharing with me off camera before we got started that you grew up in a household with someone who was a very successful entrepreneur. Your father, he built a very big company. And you playfully were like, yeah, I spoke 2 languages, English and like the language of business. And what I am hearing back, right, like in terms of those comments, like it's very, emotional based and not very logic based, where from a business perspective, and I was telling my wife, like, it's not even in, I feel like one of these like politicians. I'm like, well, you took that out of context. You didn't see the whole conversation, right? But the whole conversation was like, every business has a value chain. And understanding that there's probably like this much of the value chain that produces 80% of all of the outcomes. Correct. And if whatever doesn't fit into that 80% should be delegated, and you provide an opportunity for somebody else, whether it's a salary position or something of that nature, so you can stay in the most valuable piece of the value chain. And if you can do that over an extended period of time, you'll get disproportional outcomes. Now, when I say that to you, as somebody who grew up in a house with business, that makes total sense to you, doesn't it? Yes.
Yes. But why do you think that that's difficult for people to like acknowledge or accept in the realm of real estate?
It's difficult for me to answer that question because to me, it's so common sense.
Yeah.
Know your value, know your worth, know your strengths. But the key to success is knowing your weaknesses. Like you just said, delegation. Mm-hmm. Without delegation, without being honest with yourself, you will never be able to succeed. It's the same thing as the concept of you're not everybody's person, mm-hmm. right? Not everybody's going to like you. Mm-hmm. So if you can accept that statement, then you should very easily be able to accept the fact that you're not going to be good at everything in your business. And there is always somebody out there that could help you do better if you delegate this out. There are people that are good at things for a reason. Hire them. I mean, and it's just time wasted on trying to be the best at AI. Like, I'm not good with systems. My organization is terrible. I'm a now person. I don't know if you're familiar with DISC assessments, but I'm very high D, high I. My S&C is shot. So I need to include people in my system, in my formation of my business, that can organize and delegate that realm for me, because that's not my strong suit. If I took time to organize and follow up and send emails and send thank you notes and do all of these things that I'm not naturally good at and force myself to, it's going to take twice as long, and it's going to take my time away from what I'm good at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm just writing things down as you're speaking. So the first thing I tell agents all the time, coaching clients and stuff, or people in the organization, is if you don't have a system, you are the system. So, and what I tell people is, like, if your body is the hardware, our brains are the software. And most agents, what the problem is that they're the only one who has access to their software. So nobody else can actually help them or do anything. And I believe, I'm curious, like, what your thoughts are. I think part of the reason why this is because 65% of us grew up in families that live paycheck to paycheck. So what we heard are things like money doesn't grow on trees.
Right.
Eat all the food on your plate. A penny saved is a penny earned, which is horseshit because it's just a penny.
Yeah, I've heard that one, but yeah.
And then the fourth one, though, and this is the one that I think is kind of the root cause of this, is if you want to do something right, you have to do it yourself. Yeah. And then that leads to this kind of mental map of, like, I have to be involved in everything. And you touched on something too, which is like, everybody needs to like me. And I'm not saying that, like, the goal and objective is to have people that not like you. It's not the goal and objective.
No,
what I am aware
just be yourself.
Yeah. And what I am aware of is as your audience expands, it becomes impossible to make everybody happy. What I tell people is, like, look, if Jesus showed up right now, somebody wouldn't like his hair. Somebody wouldn't like his sandals. Somebody definitely wouldn't like the color of his skin. You know what I mean? Like, that's just like what's true.
Yeah,
right?
That's so funny. That's so true. Yeah, somebody will always have something to say, period. Yeah.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah. So let's talk about this. So you're mentioning, like, systems, and I believe that part of it is first, like, thinking. I share with people one of the best things you can get from a trainer, coach, like just somebody who's a little bit further down the path. I don't even like those words. It's just access to the way that they think, because the way that they think allows them to do what they do. So you have this, like, map of thinking. You understand the value chain as a productive agent. You shared with me, like, first calendar year, you did 10 million in volume, which is awesome. So there's this recognition of, like, systems are important, right? If I don't have a system, I am the system. And I can only grow to the proportion that my systems will allow me to. I don't care how much rah-rah, how many Tony Robbins, how many, like, podcasts you listen to. You will get stifled by your systems, period, end of story.
You absolutely will plateau, because there's only 24 hours in a day and you are only one individual.
Exactly. So for you, Alexis, like, what are you doing to get that together? Like, be like, okay, how am I working on these systems?
How am I working on the systems? It's really just, thankfully, with just having a solid CRM and then having an assistant, having virtual assistants, having all these things set in place, having a transaction coordinator. Mm-hmm. Step one, my very first transaction, before I even knew what I was doing, I immediately, as a brand new agent, new to this industry, day one, first closing, I had a TC. Day one. And so many people were like, oh my gosh, that was another whole thing. It was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you have a transaction coordinator. You have to understand how all the title and everything works. Why? Is that my job? Do I own a title company? Am I mistaken here? What's my role? Yeah. Am I the negotiator? Am I the realtor? Am I here to help build wealth through real estate and help my clients get the keys to their dream home? Or am I here to worry about title paperwork? Yeah. I'm confused.
I'm confused. So what pops into my head is, like, how many successful business people do we know that have 0 employees? None. It, like, doesn't exist, right? So I think as agents, if we don't kind of embrace a business framework instead of just a sales framework, we are definitely limiting our capacity to help more people. And then you also mentioned, like, what is my job? And I believe it's to be in the presence of prospects. That's what salespeople do, right? I prospect, lead, follow up, go on appointments, negotiate deals. I follow my plan. Everything else is like somebody else's job. Now, did you have that like right away because of your exposure, like, with your dad in business? Or did you have like somebody point that out to you like, hey,
no,
I would hire a transaction coordinator?
No, I just knew. I knew right away. As soon as I found out that transaction coordination was a thing, I was like, yes, that is something I'm starting today. I don't want to deal with it because that's not what I need to be doing. I need to be out showing houses to the next client. Boom, 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 boom. As soon as you realize that delegating your weaknesses, and again, like I said from the very beginning, organization and all those things, paperwork, it's not my thing. If I wasn't worried about the liability that came into executing contracts, I would even delegate that out. But the liability is on me. It's my name on the contracts. So I will never sign something on the dotted line that I did not fill out, period. Unless, from mine, if I'm giving it to somebody. So just make sure, and of course, everybody has their own opinion on that. But again, it's not where my time was best used. So right out of the gate, boom.
Awesome. And then how much do you think, because we were talking too, this idea of focus and this idea of judgment, where judgment's actually what's best for the long term. And how much do you think in our industry, because the average agent does about 4 transactions all year long, if you go into any office, a traditional office, I used to own part of one before I sold it back and participated with EXP 19 months ago, as of this taping, where there was 130 agents in the office. There was only 9 people that made more than $100,000 a year. 6 of them were like right at 100. And then there was like, 3, 6. And then there was like me. So I guess the question is how much do you think that kind of low production as an industry as a whole, the average agent makes $72,000 a year. And what I tell people is that the average manager at Taco Bell in California makes 70. So how much of that is because of not being clear on where to focus time?
Say that. Sorry. Ask that last part one more time. That's hilarious.
She got caught up on the Taco Bell person making 70 grand. So
here's the thing. If we ever fail, we're going to go work at Taco Bell.
Exactly, bro. And get your 70K. Yeah. So the question is how much of not being clear on where to focus your time leads to that outcome? All
of it.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say if not 100%, right? Obviously it can't be 85, 90% of, because the rest of it, here's something that I really like. You don't need to be the best. You don't have to be the smartest. You don't have to be the best looking. You don't have to be the strongest. You don't have to be the best negotiator. You need to be honest with yourself about your strengths and your weaknesses. Period. And you need to be resourceful.
And why is that so hard though? Because, being honest, like Ray Dalio, who's one of the richest guys on the planet, which is only one way to measure success, by the way. I think the ultimate success is like when you're 70, if the people that you want to love you still do.
Yeah.
That's really like being successful.
Some people at the end of the day, whoever's watching this and they don't want to be loved before when they're 70, that's totally fine too.
That's fine too. So, like you do you. But like he's very believable, let's say, in the world of like business, right? He started the largest hedge fund in the world, Bridgewater, out of his garage. But what he says is that you need an accurate assessment of reality in order to produce good outcome. Which when I first heard that, Alexis, I was like, oh, that's kind of cute. But the more I've marinated on it, it's profoundly true, is that I have to see things the way they actually are, not the way I would like them to be, not the way I think they are, but the way they actually are. And then and only then can I make decisions in accordance with that, and that'll get me closer to what I actually want. It'll increase the probability I'll produce outcomes that I want. Getting an accurate assessment of yourself, though, that's like tough because I'm aware that Yeah, because our ego like is like it protects us, right? Like it's like, you know, not as makes us not as I find it interesting when they do surveys, like how many people think that you're a good driver? It's like 80%. It's like it's not statistically possible.
Oh, I think I'm the best, but when I have people,
you know, or the dating apps are like hilarious to me, where it's like where, you know, something like 65% of the population of females represent as being naturally blonde when it's only like 11%.
Oh.
And the majority of men represent themselves on apps as being 6 foot or taller and making over $100,000 a year, when only 12% of the population fits that criteria.
Oh, that's hilarious too.
So it's like it's difficult to get an accurate assessment and say to yourself, like, hey, you know what? Like, this is probably not the thing that I'm best at. Or the accurate assessment could be, my thinking is keeping me stuck. My unwillingness, because I don't trust people, which is really at the root of not wanting to hire people, I don't trust somebody to do the job, is actually inhibiting my ability to help more people. Would you agree with that?
Yes. So again, I think that the most important thing is it's so weird. I mean, we are our own worst critics, but you're right. We do protect ourselves. We Band-Aid ourselves. We have plastic wrap around ourselves when it comes to the truth a lot of times. Us as entrepreneurs, I think that every day, you know, I'm never satisfied personally. I'm never, like, I always, even in my yoga classes in the morning, I'm like, I need to push myself. I want to do this. I need to be able to do this by tomorrow. You know, I'm constantly not happy and pleased. And it's a double-edged sword, really. Climbing that ladder, never being satisfied, but it's tough. It's really tough to look from the inside at yourself.
Yeah. And be like, how am I contributing to this? Because the natural tendency is to want to blame everybody else and be like, oh, well, buyers are this and buyers are that and sellers are this. There's like, okay, well, how am I contributing to this? How am I, if I'm producing, let's say, an outcome that is not what I ultimately would like to produce. And in the business world, specifically in real estate, I would propose that that's units and volume. You know, people tell me, they're like, oh, I just love people. I'm like, that's disgusting. You haven't dealt with enough people. Oh my God, I just love houses. I'm like, bro, you know how many houses I've been in? I have to burn my suit because they have like a fucking cat farm.
I hate the agent bios. I hate the agent. Oh, I'm just passionate about helping my clients find their next home. No, you're not.
I know. Stop it.
You're lying.
Yeah, you stop it.
We're already off to a really bad start.
I'd respect you way more if you just told me the truth. You know what I mean? So
yeah. And I don't know if it's because, and again, I did that. I was like, oh, I'm just passionate about helping the next client. It was very quickly. I mean, I would say within months that I realized how unauthentic it is to be that. And people can sniff that out.
Oh, very easily. Yeah.
Oh my God. People will right away sniff that out and be like, well, this is kind of phony. And your success will falter because of that.
Yeah. And I think, I want people to really hear us. Like, I'm not saying that like my intention isn't to give great service. My intention isn't to help. It is.
No.
I'm also aware that I can get whatever I want in life if I help enough people get what they want. So like my goal and objective is to solve other people's problems and to help them. At the same time, I get compensated for doing that. Like to try to pretend that that's not part of the motivation is like immature from a business perspective, right?
Oh, absolutely. Because we're all in, I mean, if we weren't all in this for money, we'd all be retired and living as nomads off the grid somewhere.
Yeah. And why does everybody who has like another profession that they went to college for end up like, you know, looking into getting into real estate? It's because whatever profession that they chose doesn't pay them appropriately for the time and energy that they're spending. I mean, that's the real truth. Why do people want to learn how to do subject to? Why do people, like, I was just on Pace Morby's podcast. It's like, why does he have 12,000 people in his community? Because like, you know, they want to learn how to make money. That's what they want to do. They want to build wealth. Like that's right. And you can't learn that in school. You can't learn that in college, unfortunately. If you're at Starbucks, 7 out of 10 people live paycheck to paycheck. It's very difficult to move away from that and think like, no, I need to get big. Because we were told staying small is what? Don't make too much noise, don't stand out, don't make a fuss, get a pension.
Once you create and go through this process, now I told you, 3 people full time. So I have a listing coordinator. Agents call her through the MLS. She answers all the questions. If she needs me, then she contacts me. I only get to touch that deal once we get an offer and we get under contract. After that, I send it back, and then see you at closing, which is usually, I believe, that's
Right.
so that's one. The other person that I have an operations manager. It's my brother. He takes care. He supervises everything too, making sure that they're doing their job. He helps me with the marketing that we do. We do a lot of social media. We're hosting a lot of events. Uh, so he's my, that's another way to build your business too. You can hire a manager, a supervisor. Usually, it's not the trend. It's not how you do it. I've noticed in real estate, but it's another way. Somebody in marketing, a marketing person, and the third person that I recently maybe 6 months, a full-time video editor. I'm doing a lot of content on social media, so I find myself. We were talking about that. Recording yourself is not, once you get comfortable being in front of the camera, it's not the difficult part. It's editing the clips and putting it out there. So I'm doing it at a volume, like Aaron is doing too. That you need somebody that does it. Either you outsource it or you bring it, full staff. But that's at least in my case that I'm being intentional and aggressive on social media. In your case, if you focus your business maybe on networking, maybe you need somebody that helps you do events like this and coordinate events with the food, with the drinks, securing the location.
To follow up with everybody who came.
Follow up to create the Eventbrite list. You know what I mean? All of that.
These are all SOPs too.
Yeah, they're all
All
SOPs.
of these are SOPs. It's
Yeah.
just that depending on the business, then you know which type of SOPs you need.
So once you sign that listing agreement, you delegate the communication with the seller?
I pretty much, yeah. It has to be, very very picky seller that that wants me to be in communication, but most of the time I just put it in communication. And the reality is that you don't need a much interaction between seller and herself. They just want maybe updates or showings.
Yeah.
Hey, somebody's want to show this property. You can send that in a text.
And I imagine when it comes time to ask for a price adjustment, it's you though.
Yes.
Yes.
That's when I jump in. When it comes to price reductions, I jump in. I call the sellers. I try to call sellers once a week to give them an update on the property, and whatever it is going on, and whenever it's time to a price reduction, and obviously to discuss offers.
Because that's
Anything that has to do with the negotiation.
that's doctor work.
That's doctor work.
Whenever I say that, my wife's like, "You're not a doctor," and I'm like, "I'm a doctor of selling." So that's doctor work, which is having those conversations.
But everything, think about it like this. Everything that you can put that is not negotiation, that you can put in a piece of paper, that can follow a process that doesn't have to be you can leverage and pass it up. Trust me, that's when the magic happens.
Let me ask you the question. Do any of you guys ever have clients that only want to work with you?
They don't want to interact with
We
anyone
usually
else.
don't take those clients.
Yeah. Yeah.
The question is, have you ever had a client that doesn't want to work with anybody else or interact with anybody else?
Correct.
Or they get charged a premium,
Yeah.
like on the legal side.
I haven't honestly.
Yeah, I do. Sure.
I get a lot of those. I tell them they do their job better than I would do their job. Like if they don't want to speak to my processor, they speak to me.
Yeah, and yeah, so we like our transaction coordinator is like rock star, and when they would give pushback, I'm like, yeah, I appreciate that. She's been with me for all like 2,000 transactions. Truthfully, she's better at it than I am. So I oversee the process, but she will be the point of contact moving forward. Make sense? And they're like, yeah, I guess so.
Usually is setting the expectations.
Yeah,
Even
upfront.
as soon as you sign that listing or sign that buyer, you set the expectations. Okay, perfect. We're ready to work together. So just so you know, my
Listing coordinator.
my listing coordinator, my transaction, she's gonna be contacting you. She's awesome. She's gonna be available for you. So whenever I cannot pick up your call, it's gonna be there. So you can be in touch with us 24 hours. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like it's setting the expectations so they don't think and expect that you are the one that has to be.
And the same thing, and here's how I would word it language-wise, right? So when I first started doing this, I didn't do a transition. So people would be like, who the hell is Donna? Like, why is she calling me?
Yeah.
It's a handoff.
Because I didn't do a baton handoff. And there's just a little language that you can use. It's like, great, now that we have a fully executed agreement, my assistant, her name is Donna. She's my personal assistant, which makes her your personal assistant to the transaction.
That's good.
She's gonna be reaching out to you within 24 to 48 hours, introducing herself. She's gonna be the one that schedules appraisals and inspections. She reports to me regularly and I oversee the process. She'll be the point of contact moving forward. And they're
That's
like,
a script, guys.
okay, yeah, it's a script. And I would say it 10, 15 times a month, every single time. And the thing you have to understand is people are looking to be led. Our job is to lead them. If you don't believe me, watch what would happen. If we were in a place, like let's say, that place up here that's got all the restaurants, and a group of people, we all stood outside and we looked up. Within 10 minutes, we'd have a crowd of people looking up like, what the hell are we looking at? People are looking to be led. You ever seen those videos where somebody's like, oh my God, there's somebody famous. It's just like a dude, and then like the whole mall like goes nuts. And it's just like some guy. People are looking to be led. Our job is to lead them. But we are afraid to do it because we're like, oh, if I tell them what to do, they're gonna get mad and like blah, blah, blah. But like, they don't do this 10 times a month. They do it like once every 10 years. They're like, oh, this is the way it's done? You're like, yeah. And they're like, okay, cool.
No? Oh, I thought you did.
So you delegate.
This is blowing this guy's mind right now. He's like, God damn. So wait a minute, let me get this straight. Once you get the list of paperwork, you don't talk to him again? Oh my God. This is fantastic.
So you delegate the part of having somebody else go to the appraisals, inspections.
100%, bro. Let me ask you a question. Are you a professional inspector? Then why the hell would you be there? Are you a professional appraiser? And is it illegal to try to influence an appraiser? So why do you go? I know why, to try to justify your commission. It's the only reason why you go, guys.
So,
Which is fine, but let him ask you. But I'm just aware, guys, listen to me. I sold 2,000 homes in my career, okay? 2,000. You know how many times I went to an appraisal? 0.
Even from the beginning?
0.
Not the first one?
0. 0. Zip zilch. I'm not an appraiser, bro. I'm curious. Did you go to school to be an appraiser? So then what the hell are you doing there? I didn't go to one home inspection. Didn't go to one walkthrough.
You have to make sure they appraise the house.
No, you can't. You have no influence over that. It is illegal to try to influence that, brother. Do you understand what I'm saying to you?
somebody said, well, that you can to bring the comparables. Well, again, I know that you see a different. You can bring the comparables, but you can also email the comparables.
Yeah, bro. Why do you got to be there?
You know, if
You think because you're gonna be like, oh, here's my like that's gonna like influence them? No.
if you really want to share the comparables, you don't have to be in the property to share. Like, I'm not there. What I do is, and again, to what Aaron said is true. It's illegal to try to influence. Now, it's not illegal to share comparables. Some appraisals, they even ask you
Yeah, fine.
for comparables. Now, the conversation is, Mr. Appraisal, they're the ones reaching out. Hey, I receive an appraisal request. I want to go to your property.
Yeah, and
Like, okay.
how often do they listen?
Do you have access to the Supra?
Fucking never.
Then they have access to the Supra. Well, if the property is occupied, I send somebody to meet with them, right? If they have to be there. If not, the seller can open the door.
Claro.
It's a 15-minute situation. But if you want to send the comparables, the conversation, Mr. Appraisal, okay, perfect. The seller's going to open the door for you on Friday at 4 p.m. Is it okay if I share with you some recent sales that we consider to price this unit? 90% of the time, they're going to say yes. And then, okay, can you please text me your email and I'll send it to you?
Simple.
You have to be there to bring a comparable.
That's right. Yes.
So can you also delegate showing of the house then?
Of course.
You don't have.
Of course. Hey, here's a really good way. Here's a really good way to emphasize something.
The appraisal part.
Yes.
What if your seller, your client, is asking you to open a door for them because they don't want to deal with it?
Then send somebody and pay him $50 to open the door.
You can literally send. I have.
Mira, he sends a group chat because we have over 300 agents. Sends a group chat. Who wants to open the door for $50? Somebody's like, bing, and they go open the door.
There's even an application right now where you can pay a flat fee for another agent, another licensed agent that can do that for you. So you don't have to be there. What I do, I don't have the application. I've heard about the application. I literally have a WhatsApp group.
Somewhere up north.
Claro, can I make a suggestion? Use it for somewhere around here.
Yeah. So I have a WhatsApp group with like 30 to 40 agents. And the sole purpose of that group is every time that I have to do a showing, an appraisal, or meet with a photographer, I just post it there, the day, the time, the property, and I say I'm paying $30. And guess what? Agents raise their hand and they want to take an Uber service. They want to do it.
But do you see how doing these little things are basically up here? What would stop you from doing it? The saver, the staller. You see what I'm saying? The supervisor. I feel like I have to be there.
I travel a lot. That WhatsApp group saved me a lot because it's like, well, I'm gone. Somebody else is showing my buyer's profit.
Yes.
I'm not losing the opportunity. That's exactly what this is about. Time freedom.
Okay, let me ask you a question. If there was a stock that normally traded at $750, but it was trading at like $50, and you knew it was really worth $750, how much of the $50 stock would you buy? All of it. All of it. Do that with your time. You understand? If I know my time's worth $750, I should be willing to buy my time for anything less than that. It's going to cost me $250 an hour to hire you? Fine. It's going to cost me $100 to have somebody cut the grass? Fine. You understand what I'm saying? Because trust me, that spills out into other things too.
But you pay somebody to show the property for you because you're buying that time. What are you supposed to be doing with that time?
Being productive.
Be productive, not sit at the beach.
Exactly.
Doing the income producing activities. And if you know that you're not going to be doing those income producing activities, that's when you're like, I'd rather go and show the property. And that's an analysis that you don't consciously do.
Yeah, or you have an internal conflict with the actual activities. So you end up doing creative avoidance behavior. Creative avoidance is where you create something to do to make you feel like you're working and you're actually not. You're not being productive. Because remember, you only get paid to do 4 things. What are they? Prospect, lead follow-up, go on appointments, negotiate deals. That's it.
Have these been valued?
Helpful. Useful.
All right. So I want to close it out with final thoughts. Melinda, starting with you. Final thoughts on scaling from experience. What do you want to leave this room with?
I think what I want you all to remember is that growing a business is a daily battle, right? No matter what business it is, we're battling. What we're battling is ourselves. And so figuring out your internal battles, whether you ignore the battle or you stuff it in a closet or put it in a drawer, it's still going to be there. So we have to go deep. We got to figure out what our tendencies are, what our defaults are, and how we behave to be able to rewire our brains. And that takes time, and that takes reflection, and that takes mentorship, and that takes coaching, and that takes reading, and that takes, and then just executing, right? And putting things in place to create yourself an environment to thrive. So all these things are really good systems. Some of you probably learned something new, but a lot of the things we're talking about are not secrets. They're not rocket science. So we need to implement. And sometimes we're afraid to do that for one of these 5 demons or whatever. Assassins. And so that's why we go back to what's it all about? Like, what are we doing this for? Why are we afraid? What's stopping us? And really spending time on that, I'm telling you, it'll be worth its money in gold or more, because once you break through on that, you'll really start to see your lives change. Personal and financial and business lives will change once you start to do that. And because that's what it's all, it's not just money. It's about how you're living your life. You're probably showing up in that same fear in other things in your life as well.
And let me say that getting proximity with Melinda, guys, like she's a great, I don't know, I generally don't know anybody in my life that is such a great planner like yourself. Like for real, like she's planning everything. She has SOPs for everything. So anything that has to do with systems, just talk to her. Just talk to her. And she's a giver, guys. So take advantage. I
won't just close your deals. I'll help you
there you
with
go.
A lot of other stuff too.
Novello, what do you got?
Dear Novello.
Yeah, dear. Yeah, come on, bro.
Gotta keep it up.
Accomplishing anything is 80% psychology and 20% mechanics.
Yeah.
It's 80% what's going on in here and mental maps and beliefs, which are just opinions that you've developed loyalty to, and then 20% the technical component. And doing is better than watching. We have become a whole generation that just watches. You will watch people on YouTube, you'll watch people on Insta, you'll watch people do what you want to do. But the way that you learn is by actually doing, not watching. Right? And it's not 10,000 hours, it's 10,000 iterations. You have to be willing to screw something up a lot to get really good at it.
If you don't follow Aaron Novello on Instagram, social media, just follow the guy. I mean, the reason Aaron is truly the example of scaling because, again, once he found the formula on the scaling the business and hire the right people, it's what you use with that free time, that time that you bought back, right? And he did that for 20 years, hundreds of thousands of transactions in the 20 years.
Thousands, yeah. But who's counting? I don't know.
But who's counting, right? Yeah. In my case, final thought, it comes down to one decision. You got to make the decision. It could be, if you don't even have a transaction coordinator, that's the first step. You have to hire somebody that transacts all your transactions, that coordinate all your transactions. And it's like rentals. I made the decision a long time ago, I'm not going to work with rentals. It's not worth my time, period. So I know that some of you might already make that decision, right? So for Aaron, even from the beginning, he said, I'm not going to work with buyers. He has never shown a property, guys. Never to a buyer. Well, so that's a decision.
Well, here's what's true. I did, but for 15 years, I did not. I did not own an e-key. I couldn't even show property if you wanted me to.
So he made the decision, I'm only going to work with
That's right.
So you got to make the decision. The same thing.
I'll tell you.
I'm going to hire that assistant. We're going to hold you accountable.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to hire that VA. I'm going to hire the transaction coordinator, the listing coordinator. I'm going to outsource my showings if you're there. I'm going to outsource my appraisals, my photography to free up that time and then do the income producing activities with that time. Because if you hire everybody and outsource and don't do the other part, then what are you doing?
I have a webinar that I did for agents last year on demand. I'll share it with you guys since I have the list. It's about hiring a VA and using a VA, so it can get you started thinking about different things to think about.
No, but and before I finish with my friend Eric here, you remind me about the webinar. There's a piece of paper in your tables. That is an next event that I'm having, an amazing event about real estate investing. I put that program alongside with my investors, and we teach you guys on how to search and put together investment deals. That's another way that for me is a big deal when it comes to scaling. I'm heavy into working with investors because I find that it's way easier than working with traditional buyers and sellers. So just sign up. It's going to be next week. It's going to be.
So my two biggest takeaways are don't get complacent and don't forget why you started, right? Because a lot of people, once they get to the point where they have to start scaling, they get comfortable and they forget why they started. No one started becoming a realtor just to close 12 deals a year, right? Everybody had a long vision of buying 20 properties and being able to retire and all that stuff, right? Yeah. Don't get complacent in your, in your success. Keep your system in place. What is it? Fighting your 5 demons or whatever it is.
Assassins.
Your fellow assassins. And don't forget why you started. It's very simple.
You just change it to demon.
Yeah, it's fine.
Demon sounds better.
Hey, do you notice that I was the only one that remembered? I'm coachable.
Wow.
Dear coach, I'm coachable.
Dear coach. Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks,
Appreciate it. And I get to make my favorite phone call.
Oh, man. Oh, it's my favorite.
Hey, Tom. Yep. It's Aaron here.
And I know they know. Fuck. Yeah, I just want to let you know I met with the Smiths and they decided to hire us. I'd love to have the opportunity to work with you. If you have a buyer, bring them by. But you could go ahead and cancel your appointment at 4. Bye-bye now.
Come on, Aaron. That's not your favorite phone call.
Oh, it's the favorite one. Yeah, it's one of the favorites for sure. Yeah. I'll give you one story. I was on an appointment. At the beginning of my career, I went on an expired appointment. And this is at the time where there's massive expires. There were 4 people going on the appointment. But I purposely scheduled myself so I was the last one. I knew there was an appointment at 3, right? So I show up at 3:30 and I knock on the door. My appointment's at 4. Person comes to the door, they're like, oh no, if you don't mind, we have an agent here. I was like, oh, it's no problem. I could just wait in the living room. Bro, you want to see somebody turn white and shit their pants? And I just sit there and I watch him start to fumble. He's like, mess his whole thing up. I'm like, get the fuck out of there, bro. So he gets out, I sit down with the seller, the husband looks right at me, he goes, that was stone cold. And then he proceeded to list the property with me. Right? So, what Jose's saying is this is a zero-sum game. I want everybody in this room to be as successful as possible. I want you to take as many listings as you possibly can. And our intention today is to be that relationship for you guys, right? To equip you with what you need, the tactical, practical information that you need in this marketplace with regards to strategy. Are we clear that we need a different strategy? With regards to what to say and how to say it. Are we more clear on what to say and how to say it? Does it seem like it's like some sort of coincidence that me and Jose are lucky that we list so many properties? Does that seem true? No. There's a very logical, practical system that we're using that you guys can learn. Okay? So I think what would be cool now is maybe to open it up for a quick Q&A. Any questions and answers? Yeah. Anything you guys got? We got microphones if anybody's got any questions. Yes, ma'am.
So you say that you don't come to a price right away.
Yes.
Yep. So do you do a net sheet? And I don't think
No.
You don't do a net sheet.
I don't
either.
avoid a net sheet as
At
much
all
as
costs.
I can.
And
people get so analytical on the net sheet. They're like, $55 for a notary? And it's like, or the other agent said the notary is going to be free.
Yes.
And it's like, dude, you're making a $500,000 decision over a $50. They get so analytical.
You're like creating friction that doesn't need to be any. So what I used to do, because I was trained to do it, I would send the net sheet before I go and people would cancel appointments. So then I experientially stopped doing that. And instead, once we have agreement, I have them start to take care of the paperwork. And after they sign a 4-page listing agreement, what's the thing we're looking at? The net sheet.
Or for me, if they ask me, well, how much am I going to net at that price that you're going to list it at? I'll take out my pencil. I'll be like, okay, well, if you price it at $950, I could even run a couple scenarios for you, all right? $950, and then minus the commissions, we're left with this. For escrow, title, and transfer tax, we can assume about 3/4 of a percentage point, which is less than 1%. That would give us a net of approximately $545,000.
And then you could say to them, and I'm wondering, would that allow you to make this move happen? Because if you say, was that enough, is it ever enough? It's never fucking enough. So instead it's like, well, I'm wondering, would that allow you to make this move happen in Texas? Yeah, it'd probably allow us to.
The net sheet, people get so analytical. It's such a deal breaker if you do that. You can still accomplish the same thing, and you can even run a couple different scenarios just by having a simple pen and a paper and be like, oh, let me run a couple different scenarios.
Yeah, so to me, that's similar to them asking you what the price is up front, and it creates friction. So if you tell them, they shut down, and that's what you're kind of doing. Yeah. Does that make sense?
That's why.
Not only that, but a net sheet you have to prepare in advance, which means you already have the price that you're thinking in their head.
And they'll be like, well, I'm sorry, what's your name?
Lisa.
Lisa. They're like, well, Lisa doesn't believe in our house.
If you have the wrong number on there. So the way to always be prepared is just 0.0075, the price minus the commission, which the commission's negotiable as well too.
Yeah, and I'll even
meaning you guys can negotiate that and come up with different scenarios for them. Would that work for you?
Yeah, and I'll even tell them before I go in the pre-qual. So what I'll do is I'll bring with me the appropriate paperwork, right? So provided that it all makes sense and you feel comfortable and confident, we can get started right away. I'll also have with me a net sheet, so that way you can see dollars and cents what the proceeds would be when you move to Texas. Would that work for you?
My net sheet is this.
Yeah.
This manila folder, I think that's what it's called. Actually, when I get to the presentation and I'm writing the comps, I have it on the table. One of the struggles that I had was putting the contract on the table. I wanted to kind of keep it in my bag because I was nervous about putting it on the table. So I just started putting in this manila folder, started using this to write different scenarios on it, and then the contract's already on the table.
That's right.
I don't have to worry about taking the contract out. It's already there.
What is your strategy to overcome the commission objection?
Yeah, so I think it's like, that's interesting, and I think me and Jose will both be able to answer that. I think what's happened is like, we don't recognize that they have a lot of options at their disposal now, way more than they did in the past. And I'm gonna say something to you guys that you're probably not gonna like, okay? There's an argument to be made that you make too much money for what you're doing. I mean, there's an argument to be made for that. Like, you're making $30,000 to sell a house, like that's a lot of money, right? They know this, and they know that they have lots of choices and options at their disposal. So if you're approaching this from like an all or nothing mentality, you're gonna lose shit all the time. Me and Jose had this conversation, bro. He called me one day, he's like, yo, I got this guy, he wants to list a home with me, but he will not, I've used all of the handlers, tried to do it, whatever. He won't go more than 4%. I said, okay, what's the hesitation? He's like, I don't know, should I do it? I'm like, let me ask you a question, Jose. He's like, yeah. I'm like, where did your family come from originally?
Mexico.
He's like, Mexico. I'm like, what did your grandpa do when he came here? He's like, he picked strawberries. I was like, was that a hard fucking job? He's like, yeah. I'm like, did he get a lot of breaks? He's like, no. Was that 6 days a week or 3 days a week? He's like, 6. So I'm like, let's imagine for a moment, you called your grandpa, if he was still living, and you said, hey grandpa, here's the deal. I have to drive over to this place in a moving couch that entertains me, okay?
Blah, blah, blah.
Go blah, 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 scribble on a sheet of paper, and I'm gonna make 20,000 bucks. Would he be like, no son, you shouldn't do that? He was like, no, of course he would. I also asked him, are they motivated? Are they gonna price it at a price that's gonna cause it to sell? He said, yeah. I said, go get it. He ended up doing it and double ending it. So my whole point is
and
that
I got like another listing in the neighborhood.
Correct. So my point is that it's negotiable. And the way that I handle that is like, look, the professional fee, it's not gonna be a reason why we don't do business. I promise you. We're gonna come up with something that's mutually beneficial to all parties. And I don't want us to do something that we don't both feel comfortable about, because if we don't both feel comfortable, we won't do it. That also raises my status. Like, we're on the same playing field. And now it becomes this like, okay, like we're both gonna be reasonable. You strike me, Peter, to be someone who's reasonable, so I'm sure we'll come up with something that's mutually beneficial.
What I usually say as well too is I'll be like, well, look, that's a really good question. I start off by because what do most people do when they hear the commission thing? They tense up.
Freeze.
They freeze. So smile. That's a really good question. Here's what I tell my clients. I don't have a set commission that I charge. I'm flexible on that. I usually try to accommodate my services to whatever my clients' needs are. Is there a certain commission structure that would work for you?
Boom.
And guess what? I put it back on
them.
Now they might say, well, instead of 6, I was thinking 5.
Yeah.
Or I was thinking 5.5. You're over here imagining they're thinking
3.
4% or 3%. You have no idea what they're thinking. Yeah. What were you thinking? Well, I was thinking 5%. Oh. Wow. 5%?
Like total?
Like
or just for me?
Just on the listing side, or are we talking about the whole thing?
Part. You ready? Here's the crazy part. How much capital does this require? How much capital does this require? How much capital does this require? Wow. And just initial time. Because I was talking to John Micah, he took a year off, he came back because his organization was bigger.